This is a short clip of a longer video I made on Zeke and Luther, so if you're interested in seeing more of my thoughts and opinions on this show, then feel free to check out my main channel. I talk about a bunch of other things, including the other side characters and how the show was created. And I plan on uploading more smaller, bite-sized clips of longer videos I've made to this channel, my second channel, along with vlogs and just very casual stuff. So if you're interested, feel free to subscribe. And also check out my main channel if you want more in-depth, long-form videos on TV shows and music and such. Thank you for watching, and let's talk about Zeke and Luther. The show follows two characters whose names you might already know, and their antics as they get up to living life and attempting to become professional skateboarders. A lot of their motivation throughout the series involves them trying to get money for better gear so they can become better skaters, and wanting to become better skaters so they can get sponsored and live up to their icon, Tony Hawk. As the show goes on, they grow as boarders and get closer to achieving their goals, with a bunch of fun, silly antics to do along the way. The beauty of a show like Zeke and Luther is that it only ever promises to show the audience a snapshot of their lives, with the silent acknowledgement that their story didn't really begin with the first episode, and it won't come to a conclusion with the final one. It really is a joy to watch these California dudes skateboard all day and have no responsibilities or consequences. The show being wish fulfillment only really occurred to me in the final season for some reason. I can see that the whole appeal of Zeke and Luther is portraying on screen the life that any young kid would want to live. That of hanging out with your friends all day with the best weather possible and not having to go to school. These characters only attend class like 4 times over the span of 3 seasons, and I couldn't be any more happy for that fact. One of the big noticeable things about Disney Channel shows when you watch them after becoming a grown-up is that no matter how interesting or unique the premise is, there will always be a giant mudslide of episodes where the characters just attend middle school or high school. They follow stock plots that could be inserted into any show and are mainly there to rest on their laurels until the next event episode that is actually about the premise they promised you in the opening titles. Zeke and Luther is mostly nothing like that. Zeke and Luther promises you a show about teens skateboarding, and you get teens skateboarding nonstop. Trust me, there are plenty of archetypes and cliches in this show, but surprisingly enough, they do a decent job of highlighting the fact that yes, they are relying on a trope of sitcom history, and I mean, that doesn't stop them from doing it in the first place, which is its own problem, but it is kind of nice to see some sort of self-awareness from the writers about this kind of thing. Normally I would talk about the two main characters separately, but since this show is about the two of them together, I'm going to talk about them together. In retrospect, I could have done this with Zach and Cody as well when I made a video about them, but like I said earlier, the whole initial appeal of that series was the opposite twins trope, so that's why analyzing them separately was needed back then. I wasn't expecting to reference Zach and Cody so much in this video, by the way. I guess that's just the only other male-led Disney Channel show I've reviewed up to this point, so I feel the need to compare it. Disney XD definitely used the Sprouse twins in a lot of their bumper promotions, that's for sure. Something that can happen in shows like this is making the two leads basically the exact same person, but luckily, even from the beginning, these two had their own distinct and separate personalities, even if they were mostly similar in their interests and mannerisms. Again, like earlier, the only thing to remain relatively consistent throughout the entire show is Zeke and Luther, which makes sense since the show is about them and them alone, other characters being written consistently from episode to episode be damned. I wasn't expecting or even wanting character growth as the show went on, but they very subtly changed their actions and behaviors over time in a way that felt realistic and consistent to their initial setup. Zeke was always the more grounded and level-headed one of the two, and Luther was always the more aggressive and goofy one in most episodes. In my mind, I used to joke that Zeke was the stoner skater to Luther's more monster energy drink skater, but I don't think that's what they initially intended. In general, Luther's intensity and aggressiveness is an element of the show that is only ever quietly acknowledged, but was very apparent and noticeable to me as I watched. He's always the fun-loving and cheerful guy, but can and will throw down if he needs to. He's very impulsive and immature, and I mean, so is Zeke, but only up to a certain point. Zeke does grow in intensity over time as his passion for skating grows and he gets older and they get closer to achieving their dreams. Zeke is a very competitive person who was also the sorest of sore losers, so that's mainly when he gets to be a shit kicker the same way that Luther is in most episodes. I always liked how the two were never portrayed as underdogs or bad at skating or anything like that. They always seemed to be popular at school, and were always shown working out and practicing different tricks so they can stay on top of their game. Yes, they had room for improvement in Season 1, but they were already considered good enough to start in their career, and it was just their maturity levels that could get in the way. I was just very nervous when I first started watching this show that we were going to have to follow these complete idiots absolutely flounder at being even slightly good at skating, and that their dreams of going pro were just absolutely beyond anything they were capable of, because it wouldn't have been fun to watch. So the fact that they are actually capable of skating means that they can do a lot of really cool stunts in the actual show, and it gives them something to do. It gives them momentum in the story. Even though the story doesn't really matter all that much to Zeke and Luther, it's just what they're getting up to in the day-to-day antics, I still think it's very important. So it was something I really appreciated. Their maturity levels is what I mainly noticed when Season 3 hit, because Zeke seemed to step up in maturity once they got sponsored by Riot Skates at the end of Season 2. And Luther only seemed to flounder in youthful dissonance as the episodes went on. It probably wasn't as noticeable over the span of 3 years, but watching this show in 3 months led to itself being an obvious shift between the two once the show started quietly wrapping up. They were always very similar to one another before, but by the end of the show, those distinct traits morphed into real and concrete conflicts of character, and I really thought this was set up on purpose so they would attempt to resolve it at the end, but they don't really do that. In previous seasons, when the characters would do something irresponsible, they would both have that turn of heart and eventually do the right thing in the end. Near the end of the show, however, Zeke always does the right thing from the very beginning, and it's Luther that needs to learn the lesson and be there for whenever the plot needs to wrap up. It can lead to so many of these episodes feeling like the Luther learns a lesson show, and it's something I really grew to dislike as the show finished up. Zeke's competitiveness also never really gets a resolution over time. They set up in multiple episodes that he is terrified of losing and has a complex about winning every award he goes for. How they solve this character flaw is just by having him win everything, so they don't have to breach this topic again. Zeke becomes skater god by this point, nailing literally every trick and beating even long-term veterans on his first try. I like that they're talented skaters and everything, and I guess they messed up enough in the early seasons to prove that they weren't invincible or armored with plot talent alone, so I guess Zeke is just that talented at skateboarding now. It just takes away any of the stakes for Zeke's character in the later season, and they didn't fall back on the emotional to provide tension like I thought they would, so Zeke just kind of floats in his epicness and stagnates as a character. I guess that was a sign that the show was ready to be wrapped up finally. The series finale is less to be desired for that specific reason. To quote the eternal words of Todd in the Shadows, they spent so much time trying to be big that they forgot to be good. Early on in Season 3, there was an implication that there was going to be a large amount of change in the show. Zeke gets horribly injured during a practice run for a big showcase, and the two show some actual emotions other than just gleaming the cube for once. That's a skateboarding term, by the way. Yeah, I did my research. Also, that's the name of a movie that Tony Hawk was in, so anyways. The next episode where Luther has a crush on a girl shows a more tender side of him, and from there I thought the show was going to roll with this emotional maturity that crescendos into the finale. It doesn't though, we just get some more fun and good episodes that could have been in any other season, which was what I was expecting from them before all this development had happened in just 2 episodes. That's why it was so weird to watch them backpedal so hard. Maybe it was something to do with the ratings or the audience retention, who knows. Either way, inconsistency is something that I grew to expect from ZNL, and it's not even something that bothers me all that much. I mean, again, Sunny with a Chance situation where you could have done something cool and you didn't, but that doesn't really matter. They still have a lot of really fun moments within the show where this sort of conflict of character doesn't actually affect the everyday antics of the show all that often. One of the biggest quirks about the show is that Zeke and Luther talk to the camera. They fully break the fourth wall in every episode and explain to the audience what they're doing and their feelings at the current moment. It's yet another unique aspect of this show that sets it apart from other Disney Channel projects. Season 3 makes the bold choice to have these moments be explained in-universe by making the entire series a reality TV show that the two are filming and archiving to later show the world once they make it as big celebrity skateboarders. I don't like this decision for many reasons, the only important one being that I thought it was just funny that Zeke and Luther alone were the only people who had power of talking to the audience and materializing certain objects to make jokes better or explain the situation. I mean, it's kind of clear that this was always what they intended from the beginning, but when it comes to trying to sell more zany kind of gags, it really came across more as this is just this own little universe they get to play around in for me. Not like they knew they were in a TV show or anything, just that they were the centers of this universe and everything revolved around them. More like Homer from The Simpsons and less like The Truman Show. I think their voice as characters is what shines the most in this show, so being able to talk directly to the viewers highlights that aspect in a very intentional and fun way. Also, it makes them seem even more like YouTube videos, which I guess makes sense since in-universe these guys get their first ever sponsorship at the end of Season 2 from going viral from uploading skating clips of them online. In the series finale, we see that all of the episodes we've been watching are actually on DVDs in a giant case in their garage. What they should have been doing was uploading these to YouTube the whole time. They would have, been one of the first ever vloggers.